Hark, what paint on yonder field breaks? To play or not to play? That is the question. Et tu, Favre? We share the story surrounding Hall of Fame Weekend 2016 edition next on your Packers Fan Podcast.
Hey, Packers fans, this is your unofficial Packers Fan Podcast, and these are the podcasters you're looking for. One of these guys was once a club DJ in a country saloon, and the other guy gave up his seats on the 20-yard line so 12,000 more fans could enjoy the game live. And now it's time to Go Pack Go with your hosts Wayne Henderson and Troy Heinritz.
Welcome to the preseason and welcome back to the unofficial Packers Fan Podcast. It's the show by and for fans of the 13-time NFL champion Green Bay Packers. And we want to hear from you, so call the Packers Fan Podcast feedback hotline at area code 920-3PACK-GO or just visit PackersFanPodcast.com/feedback. This is episode 106 of your Packers Fan Podcast, recording it August 9th, 2016, and all the intel and analysis from this edition can be found at PackersFanPodcast.com/106.
On this episode, we're going to be talking all about Brett Favre being enshrined into the NFL Hall of Fame there in Canton this past weekend. We also have a special interview with special Packers Fan Podcast correspondent, Mr. Tim Evans. He attended all of the events this past weekend in Canton, including the Tim McGraw concert. Whoop, whoop.
And the event that didn't even happen. We're also gonna cover the inconceivable debacle of the Hall of Fame preseason non-game that was going to be against the Colts, and look ahead to the annual Shrine Game this week as the Browns come to town to take on our Green Bay Packers. And I am super excited. The football is back. I'm at Wayne Henderson, your voice acting, podcasting part owner of the Green Bay Packers, and I can smell football. It's really going to happen one of these days.
Potentially on Friday, we hope.
We'll see.
Which Grounds crew shows up this weekend? I'm at Troy Heinritz, and although it's a gold package game this week, I am green with envy.
And you put green and gold together, and woohoo! The Packers.
Yes, I won't be attending this weekend, unfortunately, even though it is a gold package game.
Be watching on television?
I will be watching on the NFL Game Pass.
Nice. I got to get that puppy this year.
$99, best $99 you can ever spend, because it not only has the full game, the condensed game, but it also has Coach's Cam, so you can see all of the plays from every angle, top, bottom, side. Probably one of the greatest ways to watch football.
To your heart's content, any angle you want. I love the sound of that. I do need to invest and play around with that puppy. Want to remind you, the Packers Fan Podcast, we are proud to be part of the SPNT.TV Sports Podcast Network. And now, with our free Packers Fan Podcast app for iOS and Android, presented by theticketking.com. Remember, you're not sold out until the king is sold out, so you can get Packers tickets at the best prices by visiting PackersFanPodcast.com/tickets for all the details and get those free apps. It's a way to listen to the podcast on the go.
That's right. PackersFanPodcast.com/tickets. Write it down. That's your place to go all season long. Also, become a Packers Fan Podcast Patreon supporter. One, it helps us grow the show to bring you more great content each and every week, but you get rewards too. Make sure you check out all the different levels. We've adjusted them for the 2016 season. And yes, back again, the Reggie White package. You, if you subscribe for 6 months at the $92 level, could go to a 2017 game in Lambeau Field. Again, visit PackersFanPodcast.com/support for all the details.
All right. And as promised, we have a special Packers Fan Podcast special correspondent with us this evening. He went to Canton, Ohio for all the good and a little bit of the bad, and he's going to share his experiences from being there firsthand. So welcome to the show, Mr. Tim Evans. How are you doing now that preseason is underway, except for the actual games?
Doing great, Wayne. Thanks for having me on the show.
So Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Packers journey first, and why going to Canton was your ultimate dream, let's say, once this was all said and done.
Sure. So I guess I'd call it more of a bucket list item that was something I've always wanted to do, probably for the past 10 years or so. get to Canton when Favre got in. Been a Packer fan for as long as I can remember. Growing up in the 80s, my first remembrance of the Packers is during the Don Majkowski era. And then, Favre came on board in the early 90s, and I guess the rest is history.
You must have become a Packer fan the same time I did when Majkowski was on that 14-yard line against the Bears and stepped over just by half a yard, but the ball was behind and scored the touchdown.
Yeah, I think that was like 87 or something like that. I remember there was a quarterback back by the name of Anthony Dillweg back in the day. Those are my I was in 8th grade when Favre came on the scene. So the Super Bowl was during high school. The second Super Bowl was my freshman year of college at the University of Iowa, and just been with them ever since. The good, the bad, the ugly in 2005.
That's the year I first saw them play at Lambeau Field.
Oh yeah, that was that 4-12 year was crazy. We even went up. My wife and I went up to that game, the last game of that year, just because everybody thought that was going to be Favre's last game, and it wasn't. But
it was, and then it wasn't, and then it was,
right,
and then it wasn't.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
And how you said that it's kind of been on your bucket list for about 10 years because you were trying to coordinate going to the Hall of Fame when Brett Favre went in. So your plans were like on again, off again, on again, off again with all these retirements. But
totally.
But how do you, because I know there's thousands and thousands of people that wanted to make it happen. And how did you make it happen? How far in advance did you have to have a strategy to get these tickets? This way we will retain this information for when we're ready for Aaron Rodgers to go in.
Yeah, sure. So I think my biggest thing of saying I'm going to go when Favre gets in was I always when I was growing up, I was a big Bobby Bowden, Charlie Ward fan when I was following Florida State, and they got inducted. I think they were around the same time at the College Football Hall of Fame, and I saw that kind of come and go, and I was like, I should have went to that. And then knowing, okay, Favre is a lock, I'll just go when he goes to Canton. And every year you turn on ESPN in early August and you see the interviews and you see the speeches by all the players getting in and see the fans watching the game or watching the enshrinement ceremony. I was like, that'd be really cool to go there. So back when he first retired in 2008, made a phone call to Canton, wanted to find out, hey, can you book hotels for a couple of years out? Turns out you can't that far in advance. But what I did was last summer, around July, I started calling a little bit. So I did make a reservation at a Canton hotel, booked that. And then late last year, you just start following the Pro Football Hall of Fame website. And what they did was they knew Packer fans were going to be coming in the masses. So what they did is they pre-sold access to tickets. So we, at the time, needed 5 tickets. So I paid $65 times 5 by December 31st, 2015. So I could get
access to tickets.
2 days before they went on sale.
That's commitment.
Correct. That is commitment. So in February when they did go on sale, at 9 in the morning, you're able to go get the tickets, and literally I checked like later in the day, like or 1 in the afternoon, and it was like 1 ticket, 2 tickets here, 5 nosebleeds, and so they were basically gone in a matter of hours.
Now, did your pre-purchase amount pay for the tickets, or was it $64 on top of?
Correct. So the pre-purchase amount was basically it didn't apply to any of what it was. So I kind of like to do things big sometimes, so I figured we had to go to that Tim McGraw concert on Friday night. It turns out it didn't have to go to that one. It was okay. It wasn't like out of this world. But
That was the only
so
the only on-field action you saw all weekend.
right, exactly. So Friday night was the concert, and so typically they bring in some big name on Friday night. Saturday night's the instruments, and it's a game. So we bought tickets to all five.
Wow.
Or all three events.
Okay.
It was Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. Thursday night there was a gold jacket dinner that you could have bought tickets to. And we did not do that just because we were traveling that day. But,
maybe explain that for a minute, Tim. The difference
Sure.
between the jacket ceremony and the enshrinement ceremony. Some people may not know that those are
Sure.
two different things.
Sure. So the gold jacket ceremony on Thursday night was basically, I think the players that get in town probably Wednesday is my guess, and then Thursday night there's a dinner, and fans can go to that. Families, I'm sure, go to that too. Of the enshrinees, where they get to put the jacket on that they're going to wear when they do their speech on Saturday night. So they do that. That was televised on the NFL Network, so I'm sure a handful of fans probably saw that. Some of your listeners probably saw that. So that was on Thursday night, basically introducing the class of 2016. And then the next day, there's a lunch. I think it's more private. It's more for media too, where media can ask players questions. And that was the day we did the tour, the main tour. Yeah, each event has its costs. I mean, and so for us, we ended up only using 4 tickets, but as my wife and our 2 daughters are 6 and 9-year-old, I convinced them that it was a good thing to come with mom and dad. So
did they know what they were going to? I mean, I've never really heard of someone taking their whole family to an event like this. This is amazing.
Yeah. So, no, so over time I've had to explain to them what this is, why they do it. We didn't see a lot of young kids. I mean, well, yeah, actually there were a handful. There was. So we have an 18-month-old, and about 3 months ago we were like, well, there's no way we can bring him and have a good time.
Poor guy.
He would be knocking down busts in the headroom thing, and it'd be a disaster. So we had a babysitter for him. Our grandmas were watching him. So, but they did have a good time. I think it's an experience that they could, they'll be able to remember. And they did like Saturday night and listening to the speeches and that sort of thing. So it was good. It was a good weekend. Definitely worth time away and the cost to see Favre get in.
Yeah, because speaking of Saturday night, the big Hall of Fame induction that we've, as Packers fans, been waiting for a very, very long time. And even watching it on television on the NFL Network, and they were all talking about how many Packers fans were there compared to anybody else. With you being in the crowd, of course, wearing your own green and gold.
Yep.
Did it remind you of Lambeau Field, only smaller?
Oh, totally. I mean, there was probably 80% Packer fans there, and not to dog on the Bears or be a Bear hater. I'm not a Bear hater. I live in Chicago here. I probably saw less than 10 people. I mean, when you go to Canton, I think you see a lot of different teams. There's a ton of Raider fans there. A handful of Colts with Dungy and Harrison getting in, but the vast majority, 80% plus, was Packer fans. The people there in Ohio could not, get over how many people that were Green Bay fans.
They were invaded.
They weren't just from Wisconsin. They came from all over. So it was. You couldn't. It was almost like being in like a mini Green Bay, just because Canton's a small 70,000 person town, and kind of everywhere you went for 3-4 days, there was green and gold.
and that's always a good thing. Now,
Right.
what did you think about the whole actual enshrinement event, and especially, of course, Kevin Green? He does have some great Green Bay ties, and his was fun. But Brett Favre being there in the stadium with Brett Favre, hearing his speech, did you get teared up?
Yeah.
Nice.
I got a little choked up, just because I remember all the the little moments that he kind of talked about in his speech, from when they happened. I remember in Troy, and you know where this is. I'm driving on 53 going south towards Woodfield Mall on that Sunday night before Favre's that Monday night that Favre played after his dad died. And I remember my dad calling me and telling me that Irv Favre died, and my dad has since passed. So kind of hearing all that stuff, and my dad helping me, raise me up as a Packer fan. It was yeah. So it was a good it was good to hear what Favre had to say. All the stuff about the Vikings and different things that I think Packers fans had problems with years ago. I think time has healed a lot of that. I never got too bent out of shape out of that stuff. I'm sure many did, but I think a lot of that stuff's in the past. And as Brett said on Saturday night, he'll always be remembered as a Packer, and I couldn't agree more. So,
yeah, I thought that was great that was part of his speech. I guess it's the longest Hall of Fame induction speech ever, and it didn't seem.
It wouldn't be a Brett Favre record. He's got to go out with one more record on the books.
Oh, well, you got to keep the record books going. But it seems like in years past, some of the other guys, at least to me, seemed like they talked longer. It's because Brett didn't seem like that long of a speech, because he was actually able to share a couple stories that he said that he has never shared before, which I thought is amazing, because we followed so much Favre stuff. I thought, we've heard it all, but I'm going to watch the speech anyway. Then he pulls out nuggets we didn't know about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he tied a lot of different things, but then he tied it all together. You heard about him and his dad, but you never heard that story about like his last game in between before his last game, his high school game, and how he kind of shared that, which I think that was, in my opinion, that was one of the better parts of the speech, about how the talk about kind of how he wanted to redeem himself, and that was really cool.
Did you and the crowd seem to like, because at home I thought it played really well, but in the audience, when Brett Favre kind of hinted and joked around about getting in touch with Coach McCarthy to see if maybe he could play the first series at the preseason game the next night, how'd that go over?
Yeah, no, I think everybody was standing still while, and I think everybody heard it, and it was good, kind of break up the mood and kind of get some laughs from the crowd initially, type thing. And I think some people were saying how the night before they're doing this so far, Favre can't get on the field or something like that for like game cancellation. But yeah, that was there wasn't anything. I think the crowd kind of flowed with what Brett was saying up there, and for I think it was like 36 minutes. You couldn't have told me. I couldn't have told you how long it was. I mean, I wasn't even looking at a clock or anything. It just seemed like it flowed well. I think if you ask him, he probably would have rather stayed up there 20 more minutes so he could If you go on to profootballhof.com and the replay of it is on there. And I watched it one more time earlier today, and like the first and last names. So I know Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, they're known for their the way they process their memory, and that's why they were so good on the field and play calling and changing the plays and that sort of thing. But did either of you guys get to hear the Hall of Fame speech at Green Bay last year? That was on the NFL Network.
I did
Yes.
watch it on the NFL Network, yes.
It was kind of similar. That one was a little longer. It was probably like 50, 55 minutes.
Yeah, that one really was long.
But the way he was able to just pull up first and last names of people in his life from 20, 30 years ago, I just thought that was like amazing. And I think it was up to him. He would call out everybody he saw in the crowd, players, and personally thank them for coming and that sort of thing. But they obviously didn't have time for that.
And I know in between, this event and then, of course, the Hall of Fame game that didn't happen, I saw you post some pictures online, either on our Facebook fan page or also on Twitter, that you were getting a few Packers autographs at some other event that was happening.
Yeah, so this weekend, it's a big weekend for collectors, yeah. So just because the Hall of Fame invites all the former Hall of Famers to come back and celebrate with a new class. So guys like Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor, and Forrest Gregg, Bart Starr, when he was able to, would all come back to Canton. And there are some dealers, memorabilia dealers will pay guys to be part of a show and that sort of thing. So I met a fan there that's been there 21 straight years. He goes every year. And I saw a guy there that had a canvas like 20 by 30 of like the Hall of Fame building. And he probably had, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 autographs on that thing. And so it's an event on Saturday where collectors, people that like their memorabilia can go and get things signed and meet some of the players that they grew up with. The picture that I had posted of me and Dallas Clark, he went to the University of Iowa around the time when I was there, and a buddy of mine who works for Fanatics was able to get me backstage, and so
cool.
Jim Kelly was walking by back there, and Marv Levy was back there, and Dan Marino, and they bring all those guys back, and they sign a handful of things that they can sell on fanatics.com.
Okay.
And then fans will also get in line for autographs and that sort of thing. So it's just kind of a thing, it's something for me to do to kind of break up the weekend a little bit. But I was able to. So one autograph I needed so I have a 2010 full-size helmet signed by about 38 guys from the Super Bowl 45 team.
How do you get that many names on one helmet? Have them write tiny?
Got to be strategic. You got to get Aaron Rodgers on there first, and then summer of 2010, Greg Jennings was doing a golf thing in Milwaukee, and he had like 20, 30 guys come back, and they signed at a hotel. So I was able to get a bunch then and sporadically add to it. But Kevin Green, remember Kevin Green was a linebacker coach?
Absolutely.
Dom Capers that year. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to get him on there. So I did have a little bit of room left on there. So I had him sign that. So that kind of adds to the uniqueness of it. So
that is super cool. Now, of course, Tim, we'd be remiss because we were going to cover a lot about the good and the bad from this past weekend's preseason game, but
Yes.
it didn't happen. But you were there in case it did happen. Tell us a bit about, because we were watching it on TV and hearing all the reports about how it's probably going to be canceled and this and that. But when you're a fan just trying to get into this game, even if it's just preseason, how'd that all go down for you?
Yeah, so the four of us, me and my wife and our two daughters, were at like a sports bar restaurant over near our hotel at about 6:30, 6:45 Eastern. It's about an hour, 15 minutes before the game. And Sports Center's on, and it says game in jeopardy due to field conditions. And we're like, what?
Yeah, it's AstroTurf. How could there be field conditions?
And I'm like,
We just saw the field last night with a bunch of wood on it.
Yes.
yeah. And I'm thinking, I'm like, huh. So I'm thinking they're just doing some drama. And I'm like, this, there's no way that they're going to like cancel it. Maybe they'll delay it, they'll fix it and whatever. And then like 20 minutes later, we're still at this restaurant, and it says game canceled. And I was like, what? So, I didn't get like mad or anything. I was just like, interesting. So, my mom back at our house in Illinois had sent a text to us saying that she saw something on the TV where players were signing autographs for fans, and we figured, what the heck, we got nothing better to do. We're not leaving till the next morning.
Because you weren't at the stadium just yet. You were still, the sports bar must be close by.
Right. It was only like 3 miles away.
Okay.
It wasn't like far away, and parking was, the stadium, it's like going to a nice high school stadium / small college stadium. Half the size. It's a third of the size of Camp Randall at the University of Wisconsin, right? I mean, it's small. A quarter of the size of that. It's small. So we got there. The president of the Hall of Fame, when he got on the PA or the speaker thing, he got booed, and NFL Network was just, I think all these channels, they had their programming already set up so that they didn't have anything else to go to. So they just had to keep trying to interview and talk and do it. But
Well, the story I got, not to cut you off, but the story
Sure.
I got from my friend, he was actually there at 6:30 when the gates opened. So they're sitting in the stands
Yes.
and getting all of their information, obviously Twitter, Facebook, social media, games canceled. Not a single announcement over the PA
right.
until he comes out at 8:00 and says, well, you probably heard already. So he probably had every boo in the world
Correct.
coming his way instead of trying to diffuse the situation ahead of time.
Right.
And appease these people and then come out and say, yeah, we're definitely going to call the game, but we're going to have this other event coming up for you here in about 20 minutes or something. But
Right.
yeah, just no announcement to anybody in the stadium. It just must have been brutal.
Right. Because I mean, we live in a world where you get your ESPN updates on your phone,
Right.
and I'm sure half that crowd got that. And that's how I would have found out if we were at the game and didn't see ESPN when we were out to dinner. And I totally understand the fans, and from my perspective, it's a preseason game. There's going to be other games. I'll go to other games. It's not the end of the world, but there were people. I just figured if you went to the ceremony, you're going to go to the game. Like, it's not the case, because there were people who went to the enshrinement that didn't go to the game, who left town early. There are some people that just came in because you can get a Packers ticket cheap and go to this game, and it's still a game to those people. And met a gal who was there her first Packer game ever.
Oh no.
And she was with her 86-year-old grandma, and she was devastated. So like stories like that, it's like, oh, so like those types of people, NFL would say, I would, or the Hall of Fame would, you would love them to be able to say, hey, here's 2 tickets, go to Lambeau, go to Lambeau on us or whatever. But yeah, so I hate to say it is what it is, but
you thought from the field conditions that it was okay, maybe something from the concert the other night, or maybe something from the ceremony the night before with like the boards and stuff being on the field.
Right.
But it turned out, so what happened, this is what I heard, kind of confirmed, maybe denied, but they painted this stuff on the field, right? And then it wasn't drying because they painted it on so thick. So what they did was, instead of using fans and blowers to dry the paint, they used heaters to dry the paint, which then, of course, when you heat paint, makes it into concrete.
It's real
pretty
thick.
much.
Yep.
Real thick. So I think that was the issue, was that it was so thick and it became almost like I think Aaron Rodgers was quoted saying, a plastic substance. And so when you would land on that, it would be an injury to the player because it was just such a hard surface. And then, of course, it just made worse by chipping away at it. And
Right.
So,
well, there was an article out today saying that the field was supposed to be ready, and like all the stuff, the boards and stuff removed from the night before, was supposed to be ready by 8 a.m. Sunday morning. And it was said, it was reported that it was not done until 2:45 on Sunday afternoon.
Crazy.
Yeah. So when I see that, I'm like, the enshrinement ended at 11 o'clock, 11 Eastern on, or 10 Eastern, 11 Eastern on Saturday night. Shouldn't there have been a crew there at 1 a.m., like getting rid of the chairs and getting the field ready to go? Or at least first thing bright and early at 6 a.m. or something.
or paint it a few days before and then just have the board sitting on top of it, and then you just got to do touch-ups.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
There's an idea.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be some sort of thing, something for like the competition committee in the off season. Does the Hall of Fame game? Do you really have to have 5? Because this would be the 5th. This would have been the 5th preseason game for the Colts and the Packers. Is that necessary? Should this be part of the 4? Part of me was like, they're not gonna even have this game next year, but they have it every year, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate disaster all the way around, especially since it's Favre weekend, Packers, and all of that. Still preseason game. But on the plus side, like you alluded to, I don't think this will ever happen again. Nobody else has to worry about this happening. Maybe something else, but not this.
Right. They'll make sure of that.
But this makes the second ceremony now that Favre has been involved with, where the Packers have not put up a good showing.
Oh, thanks for that reminder, Troy.
Oh,
so we have
Thanksgiving last year.
Yeah. So third time's a charm, right? Because Favre is coming back to Lambeau to get his number and name put in the ring of Hall of Fame inductees.
Okay, so they'll have to redeem themselves against the Cowboys in October. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly right. So third time's a charm. It's a win for that one. Put it up.
Right. There you go.
Oh, well, we have to look at the bright side because there's nothing else. But I like the idea. Who knows what they'll decide, but I like the idea of just having it be one of the 4 preseason games, because other than the rookies, I haven't heard a single player that was looking forward to that thing.
Well, and depending on where you could play the game too, I always thought, why don't you just make it the first game of the season? It's a Thursday night game anyway. It's standalone by itself.
Yeah.
Can't you just do it then, depending on how big of a field you need to actually make it happen from a fan perspective?
Right.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it probably couldn't have held more than 30 or 40,000. So I think that was that'd be one of the sticking points. It's not like an NFL field, and I think, but they're also doing so 2021, I think, is the 100th would be the 50th anniversary or something like that. And they're getting it. They're creating a hotel and this Hall of Fame village, and they're kind of doing what Lambeau did, where they bought up all some of the residential spaces, and they're expanding, and they're going to make the field better, and so they're doing all this renovations, and it's going to be over the next 3-4 years. So by the time, say, a Manning or a Woodson gets in, I think it'll be definitely better at that time. So, but yeah, I think Packer fans, if you haven't been to Canton, put on the list, figure out the next time a Packer player will get in. Doesn't hurt to call early, book your hotel, put it on a credit card. They don't charge you. At least, plan a little bit, and definitely worth it. Had a great time over the weekend.
Well, Tim, we greatly appreciate you coming on the Packers Fan Podcast and being our special correspondent over the weekend, posting some great pictures. And of course, who knows what, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, Aaron Rodgers will likely be going into the Hall of Fame, and we'll take your advice and see if we can get tickets to that puppy and go. But do you have anything else you want to share about what you do with your day job and what have you before we let you head back to the rest of your evening?
Sure. No, I appreciate it. So, so I'm the founder of Athlete Web Design, where we work with pro athletes, sports companies, small businesses, and we help them with their digital branding, social media, domain name acquisition. From a Packers standpoint, we work with Jordy Nelson, Demarius Randall, and Mike Daniels. We used to work with Casey Hayward, who's now we still work with him, but he's now with the Chargers. Right. If you go to jordynelson.com, MikeDaniels76.com, RandallTime.com, you can see their websites. And I just tweeted earlier, Reggie White, of all people, Hall of Famer, right? So his domain name had been registered for years, right? Somebody did not renew it a month or two ago.
Really?
And I'm in an auction for it. What am I going to do with it if I win it? I don't know, but maybe
you collect autographs and domain names.
That's my hobby, right? There you go.
Excellent. Well, good luck with the auction, Tim, and thanks again for joining us on the show. And now we wait for next year's. Well, actually, right now we're waiting for the first real preseason game. And then, of course, we'll be bored and looking forward to the first real game. So 1 week at a time.
Go Packers. Thanks for having me, guys.
How super awesome was Tim to be able to share all those great stories from his trip to Canton. We'll probably hear more from Tim as the season goes on, since he does live literally around the block from me, pretty much, here in Chicago. So I have, cohorts in crime. I have safety in numbers behind enemy lines here in Chicago.
That's how I thought of it. Safety in numbers.
All right. Just some quick things here. Favre, who is tied with Peyton Manning for the most wins by a quarterback, 186 in league history, was the Packers quarterback from early in the third game of the 1992 season through 2007. Over those 16 years, the Packers had the best winning percentage in the league at .629, ahead of Pittsburgh, who was at .623. They won Super Bowl 31, lost Super Bowl 32, played in 2 other NFC Championship games, and in the 24 seasons before Favre's arrival, from 1968 to 1991, the Packers' miserable .423 winning percentage was the league's worst, except for 3 expansion teams from the 60s and 70s, that being the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So just think about that. Pretty abysmal time before the Favre showed up, and then the Favre made it into the franchise that it is today.
Yeah, and I lived through, although not totally focused on football at a younger age, but I lived through kind of that period from 76 up until 91, just wondering if it was even possible for the Packers to ever be good again. And now we're on the opposite end, Troy, where we can't possibly imagine them not being great ever again.
Oh my gosh, those 10 years in the 80s, I tell you, that's why that Don Mikowski game is so special to me, because I swore I was never going to see a Super Bowl victory in my lifetime. And then when it finally happened in 31, I was like, this is the greatest day ever.
It truly was. And even my wife was excited for it. And we'd only been married for like 4 or 5 years at that point, but we were stoked, and we spent the whole day just watching pre-show, post-show, half game, full game, the whole thing. Our eyes were bugged out by the end. It was awesome.
I even watched some cute puppies wearing green and gold jerseys.
That does sound familiar as well. And we got some news this week, and although we all kind of had a feeling it was coming, it's still sad to see that John Kuhn will not be a Green Bay Packer this season, Troy.
I know it's the crappy part of the business of football, because when you say the name John Kuhn, you assume he's going to go down as a Packer and play nowhere else. Kind of like we thought Favre was for a short while there.
True.
And not to bring up any bad blood, but John Kuhn still wants to play football. John Kuhn has every right to play football, and he's going to be playing football for the New Orleans Saints in the 2016 campaign. But I really love what John Kuhn did, as he sent out a great letter to all of the fans. It reads, in case you didn't get to see it, it reads something like this. Today I became a member of the New Orleans Saints. It's a bittersweet experience for me, as I am excited about the new opportunity, but will miss Packer Nation, my teammates, coaches, and the entire Packer family. I wanted to make sure every Packer fan knows how important my time in Green Bay was to me and my family. My years in Green Bay will always be incredibly special, and I will never forget how the fans embraced me from day one. As a small school college player from a tiny town in Pennsylvania, having the opportunity to hear your name chanted by thousands of fans, both home and on the road, is an experience I will always cherish. Nothing will ever be able to replace my memories over the years, from the training camps, incredible wins, Lambeau leaps, and our great Super Bowl run. Thanks again to the entire Packer Nation. I hope to see you again in the future. John Kuhn.
That is an amazing and very well done letter, and I believe every word of it. John Kuhn was very special, and what a great message to the fans as he moves on. And, he'll have some fun playing football this year with the Saints. Won't be the same for anybody, but hey, if we were in his shoes with that type of money on the line and the desire to still play football, many of us would do the same thing, I'm pretty sure.
So one last time, wherever you are listening to this podcast right now, stop what you're doing. On the countdown, we're going to give one more salute to the man himself, Mr. John Kuhn. Ready? Everybody in 3, 2, 1. Kuhn!
Oh.
All your coworkers just looked at you funny.
Not if you work around a lot of Packers fans.
That is true.
And now that we're leading up to maybe a preseason game that's really going to happen with the Browns and the Packers, Brett Hundley, I was looking forward to watching him play in that first preseason game, but then he got an ankle injury. I couldn't find any recent updates, so I think he's going to be healing up. Not sure if he's going to be playing in this week's game, but apparently it wasn't very serious. But it's kind of interesting that center Corey Linsley and Jordy Nelson still on the PUP list. What's the deal?
I think that's a good thing, because those are the only two guys that were on the PUP list as of this morning, recording this podcast on August 9th, because linebacker Sam Barrington, wide receiver Ty Montgomery, tight end Jared Cook, all returned to practice today. Now, granted, I don't expect any of them to play this weekend, but it's really great to see Ty Montgomery back, especially because Jordy is still lingering with that other knee. His original injury from last year seems to be on track and all set and ready to go, but he tweaked the other knee early on here in the preseason. And so I think that that's really where things are kind of iffy with Jordy. So if we can't have Jordy back, at least we have Ty back, which gives us some options in that receiving core.
Excellent. Now, do you think, since we didn't get that fifth preseason game, which, it is what it is, since we're back to the regular 4, do you think the third preseason game is still going to be the one where we would see the most action with, Aaron Rodgers and the starters?
It's a really good question, because they have the extra week of practice because of the Hall of Fame game. I might think that they would maybe go with a second game as being the one that they would actually play most of the starters and call it a day, and give those last two a real run for the money to see who's going to shake out for the total roster of 53 at the end of the day. It could still stay with the third. I think it'll depend just on how injuries are progressing and where they are as far as installing the offense for the 2016 campaign.
So it's best not to write off any of these 4 preseason games this year. So much at stake.
I know people want to see the starters and they want to see a great football game, but it's really fun to watch some of these younger guys, especially in that third and fourth quarter. There are people there that will become great football players, maybe not for the Packers, maybe for somebody else, but they're names that you're going to hear over the next 5 seasons. And so it's really important to take an eye and see who's actually going to make the team and keep an eye out who might still be good somewhere else as well. You never know who's going to show up and be your enemy or be your best friend.
That's very well said. And I just love watching anybody out there who's officially a Packer, even if it's just for a few weeks till they get traded, is seeing whoever's in the green and gold and knowing that with Aaron Rodgers, we know who our starter is. Brett Hundley's pretty much guaranteed the number 2 backup spot. And I want to see him play a lot because just in his rookie year last year in preseason, he was pretty stellar for, preseason. So I'm expecting him to take leaps. I'm going to watch all 4 preseason games because, well, we're a Packers fan. Of course we're going to watch it.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. I mean, and the big thing is that when you watch football, the best thing is that, man, when it's hot out, you just know cooler weather is around the corner.
Yeah, football's a funny sport, how, especially in Florida, California, Arizona, it's so hot at the beginning of the season and the preseason. I'm a little nervous about playing in all that humidity down in Jacksonville week 1. But midway through, we get a whole different feel, and by the end, frozen tundra. What other sport can give you that?
It's kind of funny when you say heat and humidity in Jacksonville, because that was the game that was supposed to be theoretically played in London they were talking about. And now I kind of wish it was, because it wouldn't be so hot and humid.
I would love to go to that.
Well, the depth chart, first one came out, and kind of interesting when you take a look at who landed where. So we have first team wide receivers are, of course, Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. But I thought what was really interesting was the second team wide receivers. We're looking at one, Devontae Adams. That should come as no surprise based on last year's setup. But Jared Abbrederis coming in number 4.
Ooh.
Making a little name for himself here. And like he does, he's done it every year in the last 2 training camps. Jared's kind of been one of the hot shows that you can watch out there, real cheering him on. But the fact that he slotted in at that number 4 spot ahead of Hail Mary catching Jeff Janis and Ty Montgomery, I thought that was very telling that, Ty hasn't been out there for almost a year, and maybe Jared might be taking one up on Ty.
Interesting, but we got to find a way to keep them all on the team, at least these guys that you mentioned. I mean, if we can get them all on the same page and playing the way Aaron Rodgers needs them to play, it'll be an embarrassment of riches out there.
What was also interesting to see was that Richard Rodgers is still listed as number 1 tight end, with Jared Cook at number 2. But the third tight end is going to Justin Perillo right now, who's really making a name for himself in camp this season. Kennard Backman dropping down to number 4. I think that'll be very interesting to see how that all plays out in the tight end spots. Will Justin be able to hold on for a third, and will we actually keep 3 tight ends? And I think potentially with Justin being there, I think we will.
Time will tell. And I just have a feeling that even though he's not listed as the main tight end just yet, Jared Cook, I think he's going to be great for the Green Bay Packers. I think he's a name you're going to be hearing every single game. Gets over the rest of these lingering injuries and gets to full strength. He's going to be a beast.
And of course, Aaron Ripkowski will be taking over for John Kuhn at the fullback position, listed as number 1. And Johnny the Rocket Crockett going strong.
Nice.
We said it last year, people.
Our
boy from North Dakota, he's going to be there, and he's going to be in at the number 3 spot. James Starks also returned to practice recently. So things are looking up for the backfield as we approach our first preseason game.
Yeah, and as we all know, we've heard all the offseason reports about how Eddie Lacy is looking thinner, trimmer, stronger, reinvigorated. I want to see that happen on the field. It's going to be fantastic. But first up, we're actually going to get a game at Friday night, I guess, though whether or not you'll get to see it live or a day or two later, doesn't matter. Just watch it. Browns at Packers. RG3 named as the starter. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that was big news. It just came out of the Browns camp. We kind of got 5 big points to take a look at here about the Browns. I think this won't do much for the game this weekend, although it could bode in our favor because RG3, where he may play a good chunk of the game as he tries to learn this offense in the Browns capacity under new head coach, then Josh McCown will come into the game and he'll have something to prove as well. So it might not be something that we want to take too lightly, as Josh McCown might be trying to make a statement with his time on the field to either potentially move up ahead of RG3 at some point during the season when RG3 falls apart, or probably make a case to get on and playing somewhere else in his later career. So don't take Josh McCown. I think our second string players on the Packers will have a very interesting time going up against Josh, and that'll give them a really good quarterback to play against as they try to hone their skills and make the team.
That's a good point. Going to have my eyes peeled.
Now, Joe Hayden, the Browns cornerback, was actually back on the field today after ankle surgery. I don't know if we'll see him Friday, but he is a formidable cornerback, so he'll be able to test Aaron and Brett if they're out there throwing the ball, especially as these wide receivers start to learn the timings, having been off the field, especially with Devontae Adams now coming back with the ankle injury, who has actually looked pretty decent in training camp. And then if Ty does play, Ty would obviously have to worry about that as well. So Joe Hayden's one to watch out for in the Browns secondary.
And when you say Brett, of course, you mean Hundley, not Favre.
Correct.
But even after all these years, it's hard to think of another Brett possibly being a Packers quarterback. So, okay, I'll just, I know who you're talking about.
well, he's named Brett, and he's wearing the Magic 7. So it just confuses me greatly.
True.
Now, Terrell Pryor is a receiver on the Browns. He's one to be reckoned with because our second-year string of cornerbacks there is going to have a heck of a time with Terrell. I mean, he's got some speed. He's got some cut moves. So I think it'll be a really great workout for our cornerbacks as well in this first preseason game to see if they haven't lost a step and they can actually pick it up in year 2, especially for Randall and some of those other guys. Then we also have the right tackle spot for the Browns. There's been a little bit of a revolving door for players in camp. They just can't quite seem to fit somebody into that Browns right tackle position. So I think this will be a great opportunity to see what Clay Matthews and the rest of the OLBs will be able to do as they kind of shift around the defense this year. That'll be a big opportunity for them to work on their schemes and their blocking in order to make sure that we can have a really great pass rush from the OLBs this season. So great way to open up for them, showcasing their efforts from these first 2 weeks of practice.
Absolutely. It's one of those teams that we don't even play that often in the regular season. So playing them in the preseason, there's so much to watch, and we're just so glad football's back. And like you alluded to, Troy, they've got a new coach with the Browns.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson takes over, and it's been kind of interesting because they've had like different coaches all over the place. I think this is their 6th coaches since the team was reinstated since 1999. So Hugh Jackson's going to have some big shoes to fill, some work ahead of him, especially taking on RG3, who's going to be a little bit of a project quarterback. He came out, flashed in the pants his first season in Washington. And then, of course, nobody taught him really how to play quarterback in the NFL. So is Hugh going to have to spend a lot of time with RG3 in order to make him into the quarterback Hugh wants him to be for the long term for the franchise? And then, of course, do that while also constructing a team around him in order to take the Browns, hopefully, to the next level.
Now, did you say they've had 16 coaches in 18 years?
6 coaches, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Right? Six
Because for a minute
coaches.
I thought, wow, that is a revolving door. But even 6 in 18 years compared to what the Packers have. Now, Hugh Jackson, that's a name I'm very familiar with. I think they finally got somebody who really knows the game and might be able to finally, because I would like to see the Cleveland Browns do well. I mean, they're one of those standard teams. They were such, they were always in the championship games against the Broncos back in the day with John Elway, and they've just never got it together since coming back to life. I don't know if it's something to do with, karma tied to how they first disappeared and turned into the Ravens. Time will tell.
And you remember, Hugh coached the Raiders for 2 seasons back in 2010 to 2012 before heading on over to the Cincinnati Bengals to be a defensive backs coach, followed by a running backs coach, and then the offensive coordinator. So I think if someone can get RG3 to understand the game and what he's capable of doing, I think Hugh might be the person to just do that and rein him in and make sure that we can have a successful team there in Cleveland once again, ever since the Ravens went and left town.
Very, very true indeed. And speaking of coaches, Mike McCarthy, this will be his 11th year, believe it or not, as the Packers' 14th head coach. And that goes all the way back to the beginning. He's just our 14th head coach. And there's some other great tidbits about the Browns-Packers game in the official Green Bay Packers dope sheet, which came out. We'll have a link to that in our show notes at PackersFanPodcast.com/106 for episode 106. This is known, like you touched on earlier, as the Midwest Shrine Game, and it's one of the NFL's longest-running team traditions. The Upper Midwest Shrine Game kicks off its, believe it or not, 67th installment this Friday night. It'll be the 6th time that the Packers have faced the Browns in the Shrine Game. They previously played the Browns in 83, 87, 2009, again in 2010, and then in 2012. And it's interesting how each season the Packers donate a percentage of the gate to the Shriners Hospital for children, and the Shriners facilities provide specialized medical services, helping children, with birth defects and other injuries at absolutely no cost. And to date, the Shrine Series has raised more than $3.5 million for the Midwest Shrine burn centers and hospitals for crippled children.
Wow, that's just amazing to know that such great work can be done around this sport. We talk about concussions and player safety and all of that. At the end of the day, it's really playing for the fans, and the fans that might not have had a chance to witness the football game because of the burns and things of that nature. And just to know that the Midwest Shrine Centers are able to be helped out by this game for such a long time is just a testament to the fortitude of the Green Bay Packers and, of course, their charity and hospitality for the state of Wisconsin.
Now, this one you're probably more familiar with because being from the Wisconsin area. The series has called 3 different stadiums home for the Shrine Game. The Milwaukee State Fair Park from 50 to 51, and then Milwaukee County Stadium from 52 to 82. Then they took a year off and played there again from 84 to 94, and Lambeau Field in 83 as well as 95 to the present. Now, of course, you couldn't have been at the State Fair Park because it was only through 51, but had you been to Milwaukee County Stadium for one of these Shrine Games with your gold package?
I've actually seen in 1987 the Browns and Packers play at County Stadium.
This is perfect. And how was it? I mean, it's so different than Lambeau Field.
Oh, yeah. It was absolutely awful to watch a game at a County Stadium.
Oh, that's not the answer I thought you were going to give.
Well, our seats were on the foul pole. And if you think about how a baseball stadium is designed compared to the football stadium, our seats literally, the entire corner of the end zone was completely cut off. Unless you leaned over the railing in order to see the corner of the end zone.
Oh boy.
So, it is what it is. You get to see most of the game, except for when people are catching touchdowns.
Oh, wow. Who needs to see that?
Yeah. Everybody screams and yells. You assume it's in.
And I kind of know what you're talking about because I've been to some Chargers games in the past here in California, as well as some Rams when they played at Anaheim Stadium. Both teams playing football in baseball stadiums. It's pretty crappy. Oh, in his first season leading the Packers, Vince Lombardi made an agreement with George Halas to play in the Shrine Game annually. Green Bay and Chicago played each preseason at County Stadium from 59 to 73. So that was quite a tradition. That went on for ages. And the Packers annually designate the Shrine Game as the first gold package game for season ticket holders, primarily from the Milwaukee area, like you, Sir Troy.
Like me.
So that's good stuff. Great game and raising money for a worthy cause. Tying football to all that is just fantastic. Packers fans are the way to go.
And the other gold package games this season will be the New York Football Giants on October 9th. That's a Sunday night game.
Of course.
And the Indianapolis Colts come to town. And it's kind of glad that we didn't play them in the preseason since we do play them this year. That game will be November 6th. Right now that is slated as a 3:30 in the afternoon kickoff up at Lambeau Field. And I will be at both this year.
Oh, excellent. We'll be looking for you on TV. You're going to be wearing green and gold probably, I would assume.
That's right. I'm actually wearing blue for both games.
Oh, you got one of the throwback jerseys?
No. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But not Colts blue.
Not Colts blue and not Giants blue.
I didn't. Had me worried there for a moment, Troy.
Just keep you on your toes. Oh, good stuff. This is just going to be a really, really great season. I'm glad we're back. It's been a long time since we were able to talk about football. Terrible that we weren't able to talk about the actual game this past weekend with everything that happened, but glad they made the right decision in the interest of player safety. Great for us because then no receivers got hurt with ankle injuries.
Woohoo!
Right out of the gate. So already the season's off to a great start. and it's going to be one fantastic year here at the Packers Fan Podcast for Season 6. A reminder that the unofficial Packers Fan Podcast is not affiliated with the NFL or the Green Bay Packers. However, there is the perfect time for this to happen right now because we were nominated by all of you for a podcast award last season. We did not win, unfortunately, but we were the top 10 sports podcast out there. So make sure you give us a jingle at media@PackersFanPodcast.com. Also, we don't want you to forget about becoming one of those Packer Fans Podcast faithful by visiting PackersFanPodcast.com/support in order to see how you can help make the podcast even better. Please tell all of the Packers fans and friends that you have out there about the podcast. We're going to do some really great stuff this season. It's going to be a blast.
And like that old, it was either a shampoo or chewing gum commercial where they talked about you tell two friends and then they tell two friends and so on and so on. And we have more friends listening to the podcast. And remember to listen to us on the go with our new and free Packers Fan Podcast app for iOS and Android. We didn't forget about our friends with Androids. It's presented by theticketking.com. Don't get sold out of your next Packers game. Visit PackersFanPodcast.com/tickets for details, and all season long, follow us on Twitter at PackersFanPod.
Yes. Follow us on our personal accounts on Twitter as well. He's at Wayne Henderson. I'm at Troy Heinrichs. You'll probably see us there during the games, as well as on at Packers Fan Pod. And be sure to like us on Facebook as well, because, hey, you'd see some really great photos from the weekend in Canton if you were there. So go to PackersFanPodcast.com/Facebook to join up with the community.
And get your thoughts in preseason and the regular season, which is around the corner. Visit PackersFanPodcast.com/feedback to get your thoughts in, let your voice be heard, be part of the show, and keep the conversations going online. We're going to be back with more preseason Packers coverage very soon. But until then, thank you so much for listening to the Packers Fan Podcast.
Yes, and don't forget, we have a brand new phone number, the Packers Fan Podcast hotline, 920-3-PACK-GO. That's right, Season 6. It's going to be awesome. Say it all with me. You know how to do it. Go, Pack, go!